when I was explaining that, because he knows what meditation on an object is. It's the most classic form of meditation that's ever existed for 5,000 years. It's pick out an object. In Zen, they will often use a flickering candle flame. Eyes half open, flickering candle flame. It can be closed eyes with an object that's arising. It can be open eyes with an object. The point is to find an object and learn to start to focus on that object at the exclusion of everything else. And humans cannot do that because humans are neurotic. Because the lower brain does exactly the opposite. In a predator-rich environment, would it be a good idea to spend hours looking all of your focus on a flower and not knowing anything that was happening in your periphery? You would be lunch. The lower brain doesn't let that happen. It's in this constant neurotic state of scanning everything, right? You watch a deer go to drink water, gets halfway down, a stick cracks, it goes. Right? That's how animals survive in the wild. We have the same brain. If a deer put all of its focus for the next 2 hours on a flower, it would be coyote lunch. The lower brain won't let that happen. And the lower brain is driving our life below the conscious threshold. That's how we live neurotically. And what the meditators did but didn't know they were doing was, through the act of concentration, forcing that, creating a safe space in a community with nothing else to worry about. The Zen monastery will feed you. You will chop wood and carry water. You will do the laundry and cook the food. And you will be fed, and you are safe, and you have nothing to worry about except showing up in practice every day. And now you can start to learn to focus your concentration. And the act of focusing that concentration requires prefrontal cortex and higher brain activation, because that's the only way we can sustain concentration, because the lower brain does not want to sustain concentration on any object. It wants to scan the horizon for threats constantly. And what the meditators were doing, which is a very crude way of simply overpowering those lower brain distracted mechanisms, and with enough force and enough energy, 8 hours a day, structured and disciplined. They won't even let you meditate till you prove you can get up and make your bed at 5 o'clock every morning. You don't even get to learn the first stage of the meditation technique until you have enough discipline that you've cultivated to even sit in meditation. And then you start to learn focusing that concentration on an object. And when the Zen master sees that drift, you get whacked with a stick. And you don't drift again. And after a while, meaning decades, of focusing that concentration, of eliminating threats in your environment, creating a environment conducive to that meditation, giving your whole life to it. Zen's the one that came up with the term swallow the whole fish. Giving your life to it, becoming consumed with it, wanting nothing more than satori. Focusing that concentration on any object long enough and hard enough, long enough and hard enough, long enough and hard enough, starts to transcend lower brain patterns, because you can't focus on an object that's non-threatening from the lower brain. The lower brain can only focus on an object that's a threat. So if you're going to focus on an object that's not a threat, it's going to require energy starting to build in the higher structures of the brain. So they're using the mind to simply overpower the primitive mechanisms of the brain. It takes a long frickin' time and a lot of work. But if you do that, You have now prepped the brain. If you started getting flows into those higher where you can concentrate, it's now conducive to satori, to awakening, to moksha, to metanoia. It's ready to go. And then if all conditions line up right, the mind shifts in conjunction with the brain and you have an awakening. But here's the hack of this process. And if you understand this, truly understand this, you will realize you have a car and not a horse. If we are able to change the brain instantaneously, and we are, upload energy into the brain, when the salutogen inner-organic technology unlocks, the brain is metabolizing higher structures. It's now conducive to meditation. It's now out of the survival brain that we did like that. Now we introduce meditation while the brain is tuned to receive it. Not use meditation to finally overpower the brain and get it up. We just instantly put it up there where we want it. We get a higher brain. Now we can introduce meditation, create a higher mind, but that's just the beginning. And it's this next piece that's built into Tier 4 as well as source code meditation. And that's that as that energy starts to flow to the brain starts to wake up. Now it's conducive to meditation. We can do any type of meditation and get big benefits from it, but we don't. We do a very specific type of meditation. We do meditation on an object, but the object we are doing meditation on is the very object that's waking the brain up to begin with. It's the salutogenic response. It's the inner organic technologies that's flowing in you, and it's an active substance. It's not a passive flickering candle flame. And the very force of your focused concentration amplifies the very mechanism that's waking the brain up that allows you to force and focus your concentration, which creates more energy flowing to the brain, which opens higher capacity of the brain up. So the meditation that we're using is active, and it creates a feedback between the very mechanism that wakes up the brain, allows it to meditate and focus at a greater ability. And as we use that enhanced focus concentration on the salutogenesis, we are amplifying the salutogenesis. That's why Stephen says it's the greatest creation we've ever seen, because it is violating laws of physics. Right? Not only is there no friction from the response, and not only is it a perpetual motion machine, but it is actually adding energy to the equation. That builds and builds and builds and builds as it creates that feedback between the energy going to the brain's ability to focus, the focus amplifying the energy going to the brain, increases the brain's ability to focus. There's a feedback response going, right? Now, do you really want to have a conversation about mindfulness if you have that?
No.